Hi there, Alex here at mixinglessons.com. In this video, we're going to have a look at the tape machines that you get included in the Luna Pro bundle. We'll have a look at the 3 different tape machines that Luna gives you, and we'll have a look at the way that these tape machines are very much a part of the framework of this DAW. Rather than just being plugins, which you would insert onto different tracks, Luna refers to these as tape extensions. And so we'll have a look at how these are very much part of the built-in signal flow that happens within this DAW. Before we get started, I've got 3 free guides that I'd like to offer you. I've got a free EQ cheat sheet, a compression cheat sheet, and a vocal recording guide. And you can get all 3 of those by heading over to mixinglessons.com/free-downloads. And the link to that is in the description. Okay, so when you create a new session in Luna, like I've done here, Luna automatically creates a main channel or a main fader. And that main channel will have on it the Ampex tape extension. As you can see here, it's part of this channel. Rather than coming down to the insert points and adding a tape plugin to emulate the sound of tape, it's automatically built into the signal flow. So everything that arrives at this main channel, this main output channel, is automatically going to this 2-track tape machine. Now, as you can see here, you have a few controls over this tape machine. You can choose which kind of tape the tape machine is using. You can choose the speed that the tape's running at, and also the size of the tape. But if you click here, you can open up some further options. And so here, for this master tape, for this tape machine which everything that's going on in your mix is going to arrive at, you can once again choose the kind of tape and the size of the tape, the speed, and the calibration as well. You can control how hard you're driving things into the tape, and you can link those 2 parameters together. You can choose whether this tape machine is inserted pre-fader or post-fader. And then if you click this button here, it opens up some more options as well. So AutoCal will sort of calibrate the tape machine. So what that means is that if you change something like the speed or the type of tape, then it will calibrate some of the other parameters to sort of match. Noise lets you decide whether or not you have the noise of the tape machine. And then there are also 2 different EQ emphasis types. And then there's also control over the bias and some of the frequency settings for this 2-track tape machine. And so by changing these different parameters, you can change the character of the tape machine that everything is running to. And you can control the kind of sound that you're getting from this master tape machine. Now, obviously, one thing you can do is you can dial in each of these different parameters. And I would certainly encourage you to play around with this tape machine and see what kind of characteristics and what kind of sounds altering these different parameters gives you. But this tape machine does also give you a lot of presets. And so by selecting from these different presets, it will give you a sort of pre-made version of various tape settings, which will give you a certain characteristic. And so those are really useful to play around with as well. Now, this Ampex tape machine is also the tape machine that you will get when you add a bus channel to your mix. And so here with this bus channel, once again, we have the same tape machine. But it's worth noting that this is essentially operating as an entirely independent tape machine. So you can have different settings on this tape machine to the tape machine that you're using for your master tape. So as you can see here, we can have different tape types on the 2 machines. We could have them running at different speeds, different sizes. And so these operate as 2 entirely independent machines. Now, when you add audio tracks or instrument tracks to your session, these will also come with tape emulation. So if we add some audio tracks and some instrument tracks to our session, you'll see here you're given the option to choose which of 2 tape machines you would like to use. These tape machines are a little bit different to the Ampex master tape machine or the 2-track tape machine. These are, I suppose you would say, multi-track tape machines. So rather than being the kind of tape machine that you're using here for your final mix down, these are the tape machines that you would have used in an analog studio to record each of your individual signals to. And you have the option of the Oxide Tape machine or the Studer A800. So for the purposes of this demonstration, let's select the Studer tape machine for the audio tracks, and we'll select the Oxide tape machine for the instrument tracks. So here, tracks 1, 2, and 3 are audio tracks, and then instrument 1 and 2 are the instrument tracks. And so once again, these tape machines have been added to the tracks as tape extensions. And so this is kind of part of the workflow or part of the signal flow in Luna, in that by default, each of your instrument tracks or your audio tracks are going to these multi-track tape emulations. And so from the mix window, the controls are quite simple. You simply have a saturation control for each channel. And so that means that the input and the output are linked. And so you just dial in the amount of tape saturation that you want for each channel. Of course, you can bypass the tape emulation for certain channels if you choose to, and that's also the case with the Ampex tape machine. And once again, you can open up some more parameters, some more controls for each of these two multi-track tape machines. So let's look at the Studer tape machine first. So once again, we can change things like the type of tape, the speed, and the calibration. But the way that you have to think about this is that each of these channels are all running from one multi-track tape machine. So if you change the settings here, and then you open this window from this channel, it's the same tape machine. Each of these channels are running from the same tape machine, and if we change something here, you see it's changed on whichever channel we go to. And so that's the way that you have to think about these channels. Anything that has the Studer A800 as the tape extension is all running from one tape machine. Now, if you click open, you can open up some more parameters. So again, we have an input and an output control, and you can choose whether or not those two parameters are linked. Without AutoCal turned on, you can alter each parameter and it won't alter any of the other settings. With AutoCal turned on, it will calibrate various settings if you change things like the speed or the tape. You can choose whether or not you can hear the noise from the tape machine. And then there are also controls over the frequencies and the bias. Now, something to note is that if you click this little icon here, you will open up frequency and bias controls for tracks on an individual basis. So here, what you're able to do is you're able to dial in parameters which are specific to that individual channel, and it won't change the settings on the main tape machine. So you can dial those in track by track. But something to be aware of is that if you then change these parameters on the main tape machine itself, it will alter these and it will reset them to whatever you set this to. And of course, once again, you do have various presets that you can choose from, which will give you some pre-made settings. Those can be a really good starting point, and those can be a really good way of finding out how different parameters, different settings will sound. Okay, and then finally, let's have a look at the Oxide tape machine. So with this tape machine, we don't have control over the parameters that we had on the other tape machines, things like the type of tape, the speed, the calibration, and so on. But we do have access to lots and lots of different presets. So you can find a preset that you like the sound of, and then you can simply dial in the amount of tape saturation that you want on a channel by channel basis. But once again, whichever preset that you choose here, if you go over to another channel, it will be running from the same preset, because the essence of this is that your multi-tracks are running from one tape machine. And the way that you manage the tape machines that you're working with here is if you come to this arrow here, it shows you the two tape machines that you have. And so you pick a sort of global setting for this tape machine, you pick a global setting for this tape machine, and you choose which tracks are running from which tape machine. So far, as I've been using Luna, I haven't actually done any sessions where I've used both tape machines. What I've been doing is I pick one tape machine and I use that for every multi-track in the session. But something you could do is, let's say you wanted to use one of the presets from the Oxide tape machine for some tracks and a different preset from the Oxide tape machine for other tracks. Well, you're able to add 4 different tape machines here. So you could add the Oxide tape machine again and choose a different preset. So you could have some channels running from the Oxide tape machine that had one setting, and some tracks running from the Oxide Tape machine with a different setting, and you can do that on these 4 different slots here. But personally, I think part of the sort of charm of this really is that idea that you're running everything from one single multi-track tape machine. Now, one final point, you can simply add the Oxide Tape machine or the Studer Tape machine as a plugin on any of the audio tracks or the instrument tracks rather than running it as a tape extension. So you would just go to an insert point and you can add either of those 2 tape machines as a plugin. And the reason I mention this is that in the plugin version, you do get a few more parameters that don't seem to be there when you run the tape emulation as a tape extension. So whereas we didn't have any control over any of the parameters on the Oxide Tape machine when we were running it as an extension other than to choose a preset, here you can see that we have control over the speed, a couple of different EQ emphasis types, and then you can choose whether you're using input or the repro head, for example, so that gives you the option of whether or not you are just emulating the sound of the tape machine's internal electronics, or whether you actually have the sound of the tape itself. And the same with the Studer Tape machine. A few other options that don't seem to be available in the extension version. So I hope you found that interesting. Before you go, don't forget to head over to mixinglessons.com/free-downloads for that free EQ cheat sheet, that free compression cheat sheet, and that free vocal recording guide. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.